What if a single act of kindness, performed on a rain-slicked roadside, could rewrite your entire destiny? For Liam O'Connell, a struggling single father and mechanic, helping a stranded motorist was just another Tuesday. He was a man drowning in debt, armed only with grease-stained hands and a fierce love for his daughter. He had no idea the woman he was helping, with her simple clothes and gentle eyes, was Isabella Sterling, a reclusive billionaire widow who commanded a global empire. She was searching for one thing her money couldn't buy, a love that wasn't for sale. This is a story about two worlds colliding, a devastating secret, and the discovery that the richest hearts are often found in the most unexpected of places. The rain didn't just fall in Northwood, it attacked. It hammered the corrugated tin roof of O'Connell's auto and cycle with a fury that seemed personal. For Liam O'Connell, the sound was a metronome counting down the seconds to his financial ruin. Every deafening drop was a reminder of the past due notice for the garage's lease tucked inside his desk drawer, its red ink bleeding like a fresh wound. Liam, a man of 34 with shoulders built from lifting engines and a heart heavy with responsibilities, wiped a streak of grease from his brow with the back of his hand. His blue eyes, usually warm and crinkling at the corners when he smiled, were clouded with the familiar storm of worry. His world had shrunk to two essential things: this failing garage, his father's legacy, and his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was his sun, his moon, and all his stars. She sat now at a small, wobbly table in the corner of the office, humming softly as she colored in a picture of a unicorn. Her small wheeze, the ghost of an asthma attack from last winter, was a constant, terrifying whisper in the back of Liam's mind. The good insurance had disappeared with his wife, Sarah, 3 years ago, victim of an accident that had taken the color from his world and replaced it with shades of oil and rust. "Daddy?" Lily's small voice cut through the drumming rain. "Unicorns can fly over storms, right?" Liam forced a smile, the expression feeling foreign on his tired face. "Absolutely, sweet pea. They're the best storm flyers in the world." Just then, the glare of headlights sliced through the gray sheet of water outside. A vehicle sputtered, coughed, and then died with a final, pathetic groan right in front of his driveway. It wasn't a car. It was a motorcycle, a classic Norton Commando, its sleek black frame now looking miserable and abandoned in the deluge. The rider, drenched and huddled under a flimsy-looking jacket, struggled to push the heavy machine toward the meager shelter of his garage's overhang. Liam's first instinct was to ignore it. It was 5:30 p.m. He was tired, soaked from an earlier job, and had promised Lily they'd have her favorite, macaroni and cheese, for dinner. But then he saw the rider's frustrated kick at the tire, a gesture of pure, unadulterated defeat. He knew that feeling well. With a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the whole storm, he grabbed his worn-out Carhartt jacket. "Stay here and color, Lilybug. I'll be right back." He stepped out into the tempest. The rider was a woman. Her face was obscured by a helmet in the cascading rain, but he could see she was shivering. "Engine trouble," he shouted over the wind. She looked up, startled. When she lifted her visor, he was taken aback. Even with rain plastering strands of dark brown hair to her cheeks, her face was striking. She had high cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes the color of warm honey, currently wide with a mixture of frustration and relief. She looked to be in her early 30s. "It just died," she yelled back, her voice clear and surprisingly steady. "Completely dead. I think it might be the electrics." "You're probably right. Let's get it inside." Together they wrestled the heavy bike into the dry, cluttered space of the garage. The smell of gasoline, oil, and wet pavement filled the air. She pulled off her helmet, shaking her hair out. It was a rich, dark chestnut, and it fell in damp waves around her shoulders. She wore simple, faded jeans and a plain gray jacket that were soaked through. There was nothing about her that screamed wealth or status. She looked like a teacher or a librarian caught in the rain. "I'm Liam," he said, offering a hand before realizing it was coated in grime. He retracted it with a sheepish grin. "Sorry, occupational hazard." She smiled, a genuine, radiant expression that lit up her face. "Bella, and don't worry about it." She didn't offer a last name. For the next hour, as Lily watched with curious eyes from the office doorway, Liam worked. He was a master of his craft. his movements economical and sure. He diagnosed the problem with a quiet focus that Bella found captivating. It was a faulty alternator, a common issue on older bikes, especially in this kind of weather. "It's a beautiful machine," he commented, his voice muffled as he leaned over the engine. "You don't see many 750 Commandos in this condition." "It was a gift," she said, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "From my husband." "He has good taste," Liam said, assuming the husband was at home, warm and dry. "He did," she corrected softly. "He passed away a little over a year ago." Liam stopped, his wrench pausing mid-turn. He looked up, his gaze meeting hers. For a moment, the barrier between strangers dissolved, replaced by a shared, unspoken understanding of loss. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice quiet and sincere. "My wife, Sarah, it's been 3 years." Bella's posture softened. "I'm sorry for your loss, too." He finished the repair, using a spare part he had salvaged from an old Triumph. It wasn't perfect, but it was solid. When the Norton roared back to life, its deep, throaty rumble filling the garage, Bella's smile could have powered the city. "You're a magician," she breathed. "Just a mechanic," he shrugged, wiping his hands on a rag. "That'll be $40 for the part." She reached into her soaked jacket, pulling out a small, worn leather wallet. "That's it? You spent over an hour in the pouring rain. That's not nearly enough." "I'm not going to charge you for pushing a bike out of a storm," he said, his pride kicking in. "40 is fair for the part and a little bit of time. That's the price." She looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the exhaustion etched around his eyes, the worn collar of his shirt, the deep lines of worry on his forehead. And she saw the unwavering integrity in his gaze. He wasn't trying to take advantage of her. In her world, everyone had an angle. This man, it seemed, only had right angles. She handed him 2 $20 bills. Their fingers brushed, a fleeting touch that sent a surprising jolt through them both. "Thank you, Liam," she said, her voice soft. Just then, Lily, unable to contain her curiosity any longer, padded out of the office, holding her drawing. "Daddy, I finished the unicorn." Bella's eyes fell on the little girl with her bright pigtails and a smudge of purple crayon on her nose. Her guarded expression melted away completely, replaced by one of pure, unadulterated warmth. "And who is this?" Bella asked, crouching down to Lily's level. "This is my daughter, Lily," Liam said, his voice swelling with pride. "It's a beautiful unicorn, Lily," Bella said, her smile gentle. "I love the sparkly horn." Lily beamed. "Her name is Sparkle Hoof. She flies over storms." "I bet she does," Bella murmured, her gaze drifting back to Liam. The rain had eased to a drizzle. Bella put on her helmet, her eyes lingering on Liam for a moment longer than necessary. "I'm really grateful. For everything." "Anytime," he said. "Ride safe." He and Lily watched as she maneuvered the Norton out of the garage and disappeared down the glistening road. As the sound of the engine faded, Liam looked down at the $40 in his hand. It was a drop in the ocean of his debt, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a sliver of something that wasn't despair. He felt seen. He had no way of knowing that the woman on the motorcycle, Bella, was actually Isabella Sterling, CEO of Sterling Innovations, a tech and investment empire worth an estimated $12 billion. He didn't know that her simple jacket was a custom-made piece of weatherproof gear. Her worn jeans were a designer brand famous for its distressed look, and her old wallet was a rare vintage item. And he certainly didn't know that in that small, greasy garage, in the middle of a Tuesday storm, she hadn't just gotten her motorcycle fixed. She had found something she thought was lost to her forever, a spark of genuine human connection. 2 days later, under a sky washed clean by the storm, a sleek, black town car purred to a stop a block away from O'Connell's Auto and Cycle. Isabella Sterling, dressed not in a power suit but in unassuming dark slacks, in a simple cashmere sweater, stepped out. "Wait here, Daniel," she instructed her driver, a man who had been with her family for 2 decades and was an expert in discretion. "Mrs. Sterling, are you certain this is wise?" Daniel asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "This area—" "I'll be fine, Daniel. I'm just going for a walk." Her walk had a very specific destination. In her hand, she carried a small paper bag from the Daily Grind, the best coffee shop in the district. Inside were 2 coffees and a large chocolate chip cookie. She felt a nervous flutter in her stomach, an alien sensation for a woman who could command a boardroom of cutthroat executives with a single raised eyebrow. What was she even doing? This was illogical, reckless. But the memory of Liam's kind eyes and the easy, unpretentious way he'd spoken to her had lodged itself in her mind. He hadn't known she was Isabella Sterling. He had simply been Liam, a good man helping Bella, a stranger in trouble. The authenticity of it was a balm to her soul, weary from a world of sycophants and veiled agendas. When she walked into the garage, the clanging of a hammer on metal stopped. Liam looked up from a battered Ford pickup, his face smudged with black grease. Surprise, followed by a flicker of something warmer, registered in his eyes. "Bella," he said, wiping his hands on an already filthy rag. "Bike running okay?" "Like a dream," she said, lifting the bag. "I was in the neighborhood and thought you might need a caffeine boost, and I figured your assistant might like a cookie." His gaze softened as he glanced toward the office where Lily was doing her homework. "That's really thoughtful of you. You didn't have to do that." "I know," she said simply. "I wanted to." He took the coffee, his calloused fingers brushing against hers again. This time the spark was undeniable. They stood in a comfortable silence for a moment, the air filled with the scent of coffee, oil, and something new and unspoken. That was the first time. It wasn't the last. Bella started finding reasons to be in the neighborhood. A week later, she brought a box of premium spark plugs she claimed she'd found online for a steal, insisting Liam take them for his inventory. He argued, but she was surprisingly stubborn, framing it as a thank you gift he couldn't refuse. Another time, she arrived with 2 thick sandwiches from a deli downtown, claiming she'd ordered too much for lunch. They ate sitting on overturned oil drums, talking about everything and nothing. He spoke about his passion for vintage cars, the dream of one day restoring a 1967 Mustang with Lily. He spoke of Sarah, not with crushing grief anymore, but with a gentle fondness, describing her laugh and her terrible cooking. Isabella, in turn, spoke of her own life in carefully edited snippets. She told him her late husband, Richard, was an older businessman who had taught her a lot. She mentioned her love for art history, a passion she'd never had time to pursue. She talked about feeling isolated after his passing, navigating a world that suddenly felt too big and too empty. She never lied, but her omissions were vast and deliberate. She was terrified that the truth of her life, the board meetings, the stock market analyses, the suffocating weight of her fortune, would shatter this fragile, beautiful thing they were building. Lily became the bridge between them. The little girl adored Bella. Bella would bring her small, thoughtful gifts, a special set of drawing pencils, a book about a girl who builds flying machines. Never anything ostentatious. She would sit with Lily in the office, genuinely interested in her unicorn drawings and her stories from school. One sunny Saturday, Liam was working on the books, the numbers staring back at him like a firing squad. The final demand for the lease payment sat on his desk. He had 2 weeks. The pressure was a physical weight on his chest. "Daddy, can we go to the park?" Lily asked, her hopeful face peering around the door. "Bella said she's never flown a kite." Liam looked at the pile of bills, then at his daughter's face. The choice was no choice at all. They met Bella at Hillcrest Park. She was dressed in jeans and a simple white t-shirt, her hair tied back in a ponytail. To any passerby, they looked like a normal family enjoying a weekend afternoon. Liam's heart ached with a dangerous mix of hope and fear. He showed her how to launch the kite, a cheap, colorful thing he'd bought at the drugstore. He stood behind her, his hands guiding hers on the string, his chest close to her back. He could smell the faint, clean scent of her shampoo. The world seemed to narrow to that single point of contact. "You've got it," he murmured, his voice a little rough. She turned her head, her face just inches from his. Her honey-colored eyes searched his, and for a terrifying, exhilarating moment, he thought she was going to kiss him. The air crackled with unspoken feelings. "Look! It's flying!" Lily squealed, breaking the spell. They spent the afternoon laughing, chasing the kite as it danced on the wind. Later, they sat on a blanket, sharing lemonade and cookies Bella had brought. Liam watched her as she listened intently to one of Lily's rambling stories, her expression open and full of wonder. He saw the woman, not the mystery. He saw her kindness, her quiet strength, her loneliness that mirrored his own. He was falling for her, hard, and it scared him to death. He knew almost nothing about her. Where did she live? What did she do for a living that allowed her to spend weekday afternoons at his garage? He had a gnawing feeling that she was holding something back, a sense of a world beyond his that she kept carefully concealed. But when she smiled at him, all his doubts seemed to fade away. As they were packing up to leave, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her entire demeanor changed. The easygoing Bella vanished, replaced by a woman with a frown of intense concentration. Her posture straightened, her eyes hardened. "I'm sorry, I have to take this," she said, her voice clipped. She walked a few paces away, her back to them. Liam couldn't hear the words, but he could hear the tone. It was authoritative, decisive, the voice of someone used to giving orders. He heard phrases like liquidate the assets, hostile takeover, and schedule a meeting with the board. The call ended as quickly as it began. When she turned back, the mask was back in place. Her smile was a little strained. "Sorry about that," she said. "Work emergency." "What is it you do, anyway?" Liam asked, the question finally tumbling out, more blunt than he'd intended. She hesitated just for a second. "I'm in asset management," she said vaguely. "It's mostly freelance consulting." It was a plausible, boring answer. He wanted to believe it, but as he looked at her, standing there with the setting sun glinting in her hair, he couldn't shake the feeling that the simple woman who flew kites in the park and the decisive voice on the phone were two different people, and he had no idea which one was real. The world of Isabella Sterling was a universe away from the scent of oil and the honest clang of metal in Liam's garage. It was a world of polished glass, hushed tones, and astronomical numbers. Her office on the top floor of the gleaming Sterling Tower offered a panoramic view of the city, a kingdom of concrete and ambition laid out at her feet. But most days, she felt like a prisoner in her gilded cage. Her late husband, Richard Sterling, a man 30 years her senior, had been a titan of industry. He had been her mentor, her protector, and, in his own way, her friend. Their marriage had been one of deep respect and quiet affection, a partnership. But the fire, the all-consuming passion she read about in books, had been absent. When he died, he hadn't just left her his fortune. He'd left her his empire, his name, and his formidable board of directors. The most formidable among them was Marcus Sterling, Richard's younger brother. Marcus was a man carved from ice and ambition. He had always resented Isabella, seeing her as a young usurper who had charmed his brother and stolen what he believed was his birthright. He moved through the corporate world with the predatory grace of a shark, his smile never quite reaching his cold, calculating eyes. This morning he was in her office, pacing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, his Savile Row suit a stark contrast to the memory of Liam's worn work shirt. "The board is concerned, Isabella," Marcus began, his voice a low, condescending purr. "Your recent absences, your lack of focus. The Nakatomi deal is floundering because you won't commit." "The Nakatomi deal is a bad investment, Marcus," she replied, her voice calm and even. She refused to let him see how his presence grated on her nerves. "Their tech is outdated. We'd be buying a sinking ship." "My team's projections say otherwise," he countered smoothly. "Or perhaps your attention is simply elsewhere. I hear you've developed a penchant for rustic motorcycling adventures." Isabella's blood ran cold. "My personal time is my own." Marcus stopped pacing and turned to face her, a thin, cruel smile playing on his lips. He tossed a manila envelope onto her vast mahogany desk. "Is it? When the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation starts spending her afternoons in a grease pit in Northwood, it becomes a matter of shareholder concern, of family concern." Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, grainy, long-lens shots, but unmistakable. There she was, laughing with Liam outside the garage. There she was in the park, her hand on his as they flew the kite. And there was a close-up of Liam, his face smudged with dirt, looking up at her with an expression of open affection that made her heart ache. "Who took these?" she whispered, her voice tight with fury. "A concerned party," Marcus said dismissively. "This man, this Liam O'Connell, a widower, a bankrupt mechanic with a sick child. Isabella, can't you see how this looks? It's pathetic. He's a parasite, and you are making yourself, in the Sterling name, vulnerable." "You know nothing about him," she shot back, her composure cracking. "He's a good man, an honest man." "Oh, I'm sure he's very honest," Marcus sneered. "I wonder how honest he'd be if he knew his new girlfriend could solve all his financial troubles with the click of a pen. He's playing you, Isabella, and you, lost in some fairy tale fantasy, are letting him." Every word was a poisoned dart, striking at her deepest insecurities. Was Marcus right? Was Liam's kindness just an act? Was he just another person who, upon discovering her true identity, would see her as a walking, talking bank account? The doubt, cold and venomous, began to coil in her stomach. "Get out, Marcus," she said, her voice dangerously low. "Gladly. Just be warned. The board has a morality clause. If you bring scandal to this company, if this little dalliance of yours becomes public, we will have grounds to challenge your leadership." He paused at the door, delivering his final, cutting blow. "Richard would be ashamed of you." The door clicked shut, leaving Isabella alone in the cavernous office, the silence ringing in her ears. The photos were spread across her desk like an accusation. She looked at the picture of Liam, at the genuine warmth in his smile, and her heart broke in two. She had wanted to escape her world, but it had followed her, its shadows threatening to engulf the one pure, simple light she had found. She buzzed her assistant. "Clear my schedule for the rest of the day, and get me everything you can find on a garage called O'Connell's Auto and Cycle in Northwood. Financials, lease agreements, creditors, everything. And I want it to be completely discreet." She hated herself for doing it. It felt like a betrayal, a violation of the trust they were building. But Marcus had planted a seed of fear. If Liam was in trouble, she wanted to know. And if he was in trouble, she had the means to help him. But how could she do that without revealing the secret that formed the very foundation of their relationship? How could she offer him help without becoming the very thing she was running from? A billionaire benefactor, not a woman to be loved. Her investigation brought back grim news. The garage was on the verge of bankruptcy. The property owner, a large commercial real estate firm, was notoriously aggressive with tenants in arrears. Liam was weeks away from losing everything. The report also contained a chilling detail. The real estate firm, Titan Properties, had recently been acquired by a subsidiary holding company, a holding company that, after a few layers of corporate misdirection, was controlled by none other than Marcus Sterling. The blood drained from her face. This wasn't just a random financial struggle. Marcus wasn't just observing her new relationship. He was actively, cruelly squeezing Liam, using his financial desperation as a weapon to sabotage her. He was creating a trap, and she and Liam were walking right into it. Isabella leaned back in her chair, the city lights beginning to twinkle below, each one a tiny distant star. She felt a surge of cold, hard rage she hadn't felt since Richard died. Marcus had underestimated her. He thought she was a naive, grieving widow playing at being CEO. He was about to find out how wrong he was. She would not lose Liam. She would not lose her company. This was no longer just about her heart. It was about to become a war. And Isabella Sterling had never lost a war. The pressure on Liam was becoming unbearable. The final notice had arrived, taped to the garage door. It was cold, impersonal, and absolute. He had 14 days to produce 6 months of back rent or face eviction. The words swam before his eyes. Failure to comply will result in the forfeiture of the property and its contents. His father's tools, his hydraulic lift, the half-finished engine of a classic GTO he'd been restoring for months. Everything. He had spent the last week calling every bank, every credit union, every loan shark he could think of. His credit was shot, the garage wasn't making enough to be considered a viable business, and he had no collateral left. He was trapped. He tried to hide it from Bella. When she was around, he forced a smile, pushed the panic down into a tight acid knot in his stomach. He wanted to be the man she saw, capable, strong, a provider, not a failure who was about to lose his home and his livelihood. But the strain was starting to show. He was quieter, his smiles didn't reach his eyes, and he had a perpetual tension in his shoulders. One evening, she arrived just as he was closing up. Another storm was brewing, the sky a bruised purple. She had a pizza box in her hands. "I thought you and Lily might not feel like cooking," she said, her expression soft and questioning. She could tell something was wrong. "You're a mind reader," he said, trying for a light tone that fell flat. They ate in the small office, the scent of pepperoni mixing with the smell of motor oil. Lily, oblivious to the tension, chattered happily about her day at school. But once Lily was engrossed in a new coloring book Bella had brought her, the silence between the adults became heavy. "Talk to me, Liam," Bella said, her voice barely a whisper. "What's going on?" He wanted to tell her. He desperately wanted to unburden himself, to share the crushing weight on his shoulders. But his pride, a stubborn, foolish thing, held him back. How could he tell this wonderful, capable woman that he was failing? "It's just business stuff," he mumbled, staring at his hands. "It's slow." "Let me help," she said immediately. "I told you, I'm good with finances. Maybe I could look at your books, find some efficiencies." "No," he said more sharply than he intended. He saw her flinch and instantly regretted it. "I mean, no, thank you. I can handle it. It's my mess to clean up." She looked at him, her honey-colored eyes filled with a hurt he couldn't bear. "You don't have to do everything alone, you know." The air was thick with things unsaid. The pizza was forgotten. The storm broke outside, the rain starting as a gentle patter before growing into a steady downpour, a mirror of the tempest inside him. "I should go," she said, standing up. "It's getting late." He walked her to the garage door, the weight of his secret a physical barrier between them. She stood on the threshold, hesitating, the dim light from the garage casting a soft glow on her face. "Liam," she began, "whatever it is, you're not a failure. You're the kindest, most decent man I've ever met." And with that, his defenses crumbled. He looked at her, at this incredible woman who brought light into his gray world, and he couldn't bear the thought of her walking away, of the distance his pride was creating. He didn't say a word. He simply closed the space between them, cupped her face in his grease-stained hands, and kissed her. It wasn't a tentative, questioning kiss. It was a kiss of desperation and longing, of gratitude and fear. It was all the words he couldn't say. For a heart-stopping second, she was still, surprised. Then she melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck, her fingers tangling in his hair. The kiss deepened, a silent conversation of two lonely souls finding a harbor in each other. The rain drumming on the roof was the only sound in the world. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. He rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm just in over my head." "Then let me in with you," she whispered back, her hand tracing the line of his jaw. "We can tread water together." In that moment, he decided, tomorrow. Tomorrow he would tell her everything. He would swallow his pride and show her the eviction notice. He would let her in completely. He felt a profound sense of relief, of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could figure it out together. The next morning, Liam woke up with a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Optimism. He made Lily pancakes, humming along to the radio. He would call Bella, ask her to meet for lunch, and he would lay all his cards on the table. He arrived at the garage early, the eviction notice folded in his pocket. He was mentally rehearsing the words when a pristine, black luxury sedan pulled up and parked directly in front of his main bay door, blocking it. A man in a perfectly tailored dark gray suit stepped out. He was handsome in a severe, arrogant way, with slick-back dark hair and eyes that seemed to assess and dismiss everything in a single glance. "Liam O'Connell?" the man asked, his voice smooth and condescending. He didn't offer a hand. "Yeah, can I help you?" Liam asked, a sense of unease prickling his skin. "My name is Marcus Sterling," the man said, a smug smile touching his lips. "I'm here to talk to you about my sister-in-law, Isabella." Liam's blood went cold. Sterling. Like the name on the high-rise downtown, he felt a dizzying sense of vertigo. I don't know what you're talking about, Liam said, his voice tight. Marcus laughed, a short, unpleasant sound. Oh, please, don't play dumb. Bella, my brother's widow, the woman who owns this entire city block, and about 1,000 others. You didn't really think she was just some girl with a broken-down motorbike, did you? Every word was a physical blow. Isabella? Sterling? The quiet, unassuming woman who liked his daughter's drawings and drank cheap coffee from a paper cup was a billionaire? The feeling of hope he'd woken up with curdled into a sickening mix of shame and betrayal. He felt like the world's biggest fool. Their entire relationship, every smile, every conversation, replayed in his mind, now tainted with a horrible new perspective. It was all a lie. A game. She's been having her little poverty tourism adventure, Marcus continued, enjoying the look of devastation on Liam's face. And you've been a very entertaining part of it. But playtime is over. The family is concerned. Marcus reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a checkbook and a gold pen. He scribbled quickly and tore out the check, holding it out to Liam. This is for $100,000, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. A token of our appreciation for your services. All you have to do is disappear. Never contact her again. Forget you ever met her. You can pay off your debts, start fresh somewhere else. A man like you could use a break, couldn't he? Liam stared at the check. The number was dizzying. It was salvation. It was enough to save the garage, to get Lily better medical care, to fix everything. It was a lifeline. And it was the most insulting thing he had ever seen. He looked from the check to Marcus's smug, arrogant face. This man thought he could be bought. He thought his connection with Bella, with Isabella, was a transaction. He thought Liam's love and affection were commodities with a price tag. The kiss from last night flashed in his mind. Her soft whisper, "We can tread water together." Had that been a lie too? Was she just a rich woman getting her thrills by playing with the poor mechanic? The pain was so sharp, so intense, it felt like a physical wound in his chest. With a hand that trembled with rage and heartbreak, Liam took the check from Marcus's fingers. Marcus's smile widened in triumph. Then with slow, deliberate movements, Liam tore the check in half, and then in half again, and again. He let the small white pieces flutter from his fingers onto the grimy pavement. "Get off my property," Liam said, his voice a low, dangerous growl he didn't recognize as his own. "And tell Mrs. Sterling to stay the hell away from me and my daughter." Marcus's face darkened with fury, the mask of civility gone. "You'll regret this, you little man. You have no idea who you're dealing with." He got back in his car, the engine roaring to life, and sped away, leaving Liam standing alone in front of his garage, the pieces of a fortune at his feet, his heart shattered into a million more. The phone call came an hour later. It was Bella, Isabella. He saw her name on his screen, and a wave of nausea washed over him. He ignored it. It rang again. He ignored it. Then a text message appeared. "Liam, please. We need to talk." "It's not what you think." He stared at the words, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Not what he thinks? He was a mechanic from Northwood. She was a billionaire who lived in a different stratosphere. She had lied to him from the moment they met. What else was there to think? He typed a single, brutal reply. "Leave me alone." He then blocked her number. The finality of the act felt like slamming a door on his own heart. He spent the rest of the day in a haze of fury and grief, working with a frantic, destructive energy. He over-tightened bolts, stripped a screw, and nearly dropped a transmission. Every clank of metal in the garage sounded like a mocking laugh. Lily arrived from school, dropped off by a neighbor, and her cheerful energy was a stark contrast to the toxic atmosphere. "Is Bella coming over today?" she asked, her eyes bright with hope. Liam's chest tightened until he could barely breathe. He knelt, forcing himself to look into his daughter's innocent face. "No, sweet pea. I don't think Bella will be coming over anymore." The confusion and disappointment that clouded her features were like another twist of the knife. "Why not? Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby, no. You never do anything wrong," he said, pulling her into a fierce hug, burying his face in her hair. "This is grown-up stuff. It's my fault." Meanwhile, across the city, Isabella was in a state of controlled panic. Liam wasn't answering. Her text had been met with a wall of silence, followed by the chilling realization that her calls were no longer going through. He had blocked her. Marcus had gotten to him. She stormed into Marcus's office without knocking, her eyes blazing with a cold fire. "What did you do?" Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, the picture of smug satisfaction. "I simply clarified the situation for your pet mechanic, offered him a generous severance package, which I might add the fool turned down. He's more principled than I gave him credit for. Or perhaps just dumber. You went to his home? To his place of business? You threatened him?" "I had a conversation," Marcus corrected, "and I made it clear that a man in his position should not be fraternizing with a woman in yours. I was protecting the family, protecting the company, something you have failed to do." "You did this to hurt me," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "You bought the company that holds his lease. You engineered his financial ruin to make him desperate, to make him look like a gold digger. This was all your game." Marcus's smile faded. "He was beneath you, a temporary distraction you were treating like a stray dog. I simply expedited the process of you putting him back on the street where he belongs." Isabella stared at him, seeing the full depth of his cruelty. "You are not my family," she said, each word laced with ice. "You are just a vulture who shared a last name with my husband. As of this moment, you are suspended from the board, pending a full investigation. Security will escort you out. Don't bother clearing your desk. I'll have it incinerated." She didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked out, leaving a stunned and furious Marcus in her wake. Her anger propelled her all the way to her car. Daniel, her driver, took one look at her face and simply asked, "Where to, Mrs. Sterling?" "Northwood," she commanded. "O'Connell's garage." She had to fix this. She had to explain. She had to make him see that her feelings were real, even if her identity had been a lie. Her deception hadn't been malicious. It had been an act of self-preservation, a desperate attempt to be loved for herself. When she pulled up to the garage, the closed sign was already hanging in the window, though it was only early afternoon. She got out of the car, her heart pounding against her ribs. She knocked on the office door. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. "Liam, it's me. Please, just give me 5 minutes." The main garage door slid open with a loud rumble. Liam stood there, his face a mask of stone. He looked exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed and filled with a pain that mirrored her own. "I believe I told your brother-in-law we had nothing to talk about," he said, his voice flat and devoid of the warmth she cherished. "What he told you, he twisted everything," she pleaded, taking a step toward him. "Yes, my name is Isabella Sterling. Yes, I have money, but that's not who I am. The woman you got to know, Bella, that's me. That's the real me." "The real you?" he scoffed, a bitter, humorless sound. "The real you lies, apparently. Was this all some kind of social experiment? Let's see what the little people do when one of us deigns to visit their world. Was I just entertainment for you?" "No, never," she cried, tears welling in her eyes. "I was tired of being a bank account with a heartbeat. I was tired of men who looked at me and saw a merger opportunity. When I met you, you didn't see any of that. You just saw me, a woman with a broken motorcycle, and I was so afraid of losing that, I didn't know how to tell you. So you just kept lying," he shot back, his voice raw with hurt. "You let me fall for you. You let my daughter fall for you, all based on a lie. You sat in my office watching me stress over bills that are probably less than you spent on a single pair of shoes. And you said nothing." He gestured around the cluttered, failing garage. "This is my life, Isabella. It's not a game. That eviction notice on my desk isn't a plot point in a story. It's the end of my world. And your brother-in-law is the one holding the axe." "I can fix that," she said desperately. "I can give you the money. I can save the garage." "I don't want your money," he roared, the sound echoing in the cavernous space. The anguish in his voice was a physical thing. "I never wanted your money. I wanted you. The woman I thought you were. But she doesn't exist." He took a step back, a gesture of finality. "Please, just go. Leave us alone. You've done enough damage." He slid the heavy door shut, plunging the garage back into darkness. The sound of it closing was like a gunshot, a definitive, irreversible end. Isabella stood outside on the pavement, tears streaming down her face, the chasm between their two worlds now wider and more impossible than ever. She had come to Northwood seeking something real, and in her fear had destroyed the most real thing she had ever found. The week that followed was a silent agony. While Liam packed boxes in his failing garage, his heart as heavy as the tools he wrapped, Isabella channeled her heartbreak into fury. She had Marcus fired and escorted from the building, swiftly uncovering the full, cruel extent of his scheme to ruin Liam. Her annual charity gala, an event she usually dreaded, was now her chosen battlefield. She would fight for him, not with a secret handout, but with the public truth. 2 days before the event, a courier delivered a thick invitation to the garage. A handwritten note was tucked inside. "Liam, I know I have no right to ask, but please come. I need to make things right. Trust me one last time. Isabella." He almost threw it away, his pride still a raw wound. But that night, as he watched his daughter Lily sleep, the gala's theme, children's health, echoed in his mind. For her, he would swallow his pride. Liam felt like an imposter in his old suit, a ghost haunting a party of kings. He watched from the back of the grand ballroom as Isabella took the stage, a vision in emerald green. After a brief welcome, her speech took a shocking turn. "Integrity must extend from our charity to our boardrooms," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "And recently, the integrity of Sterling Innovations has been compromised." A murmur rippled through the crowd as she publicly detailed Marcus's illegal plot to destroy an honest man's livelihood for a personal agenda. She announced his removal in a federal investigation. "To right this wrong," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "Sterling Innovations is launching a new legacy fund to support small family businesses, starting with the full and immediate restoration of the lease and title for O'Connell's Auto and Cycle." A collective gasp swept the room. All eyes turned, following her gaze until they found Liam hidden near the back. Her professional mask crumbled, her eyes locking with his. "A person's worth is not their bank account," she said, her voice trembling. "It's their kindness and integrity. By that measure, the richest man I have ever met is a mechanic named Liam O'Connell." Tears streamed down her face. "Liam, I lied about my name, but I never lied about my heart. I am so sorry." She stepped back from the podium, exposed and vulnerable. The stunned silence was deafening. For Liam, the fury and betrayal that had consumed him finally washed away, replaced by a profound understanding. This wasn't a grand gesture of pity. This was a woman's desperate, courageous fight for a love she thought she had lost. He pushed away from the column and began to walk toward the stage, the crowd parting before him. As Liam walked toward the stage, the ballroom's stunned silence was a roaring in his ears. The sea of diamonds and silk parted before him, his worn suit a defiant statement in a world he didn't belong to. He didn't stop at the steps, but climbed them, his eyes locked on Isabella. He reached her and without a word cupped her face in his calloused hands, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. He turned to the microphone, his voice amplified, clear and strong. "My name is Liam O'Connell," he said, his gaze sweeping over the shocked audience before returning to her. "I was so angry about a lie that I refused to see the truth. The truth is that Bella was real. Her kindness was real. The way she made my daughter smile was real. And the way she made me feel, that was the realest thing that's happened to me in years." He took her hand, his voice softening so only she and the microphone could hear. "I'm falling in love with you, Isabella. All of you. The CEO in the tower, and the woman with the broken-down Norton who got caught in the rain." A sob of pure relief escaped her lips. She threw her arms around his neck, and he held her tight as the ballroom erupted, not in polite applause, but in a wave of genuine, heartfelt ovation. They slipped out a side door, leaving the glittering world behind them. Back at the garage, the familiar scent of oil and metal felt more real than the champagne-filled air of the gala. The half-packed boxes stood as relics of a future that would never happen. "This is going to be hard," he said, the reality of their different lives settling in. "No more secrets." "No more secrets," she agreed, her eyes shining. "I've faced hostile boardrooms and corporate sharks. I can handle a little gossip. But can you handle a girlfriend who might have to liquidate assets before a dinner date?" A true deep laugh escaped him, a sound of pure release. "Only if she can handle a boyfriend whose hands will probably always smell like gasoline." "I think," she said, rising on her toes to kiss him with a certainty that sealed their future. "That's my new favorite smell." Their life together wasn't a simple fairy tale. It was a beautiful, messy collision of two worlds. He taught her the difference between a wrench and a socket, and she showed him a universe beyond his garage doors. They built a bridge between their lives, one plank at a time, with trust and laughter. A few months later, he was working under a car when Lily's sparkly sneakers appeared beside him. "Daddy," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Bella says to hurry up. We're going to go look at a '67 Mustang." He slid out and saw Isabella leaning in the doorway, her smile radiant in the afternoon sun. He looked at his daughter, healthy and happy, and at the incredible woman who loved them both. He had been her shelter from the storm, and in return, she had become his home. Together, they finally had everything. Liam and Isabella's journey reminds us that our true value is never defined by our bank accounts or our job titles, but by the compassion in our hearts. It's a powerful story about how a simple act of kindness can ripple outward, breaking down walls of secrecy and social status. They discovered that love isn't about two perfect worlds meeting. It's about two imperfect people having the courage to build a new world together, one built on trust, forgiveness, and the bravery to show your true self. Their story is a testament to the fact that the most incredible connections are often found when we least expect them, hiding in plain sight. If Liam and Isabella's story touched your heart and reminded you of the power of genuine connection, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who might need a little reminder that love and kindness are the world's greatest currencies. We post new stories of hope and unexpected love every week, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment. Thank you for listening.